This gun lights your firemen, the pilot lights out.
This football team is coming into our place. We're standing in our way.
This is a game of the heart. Focus and finish.
So, did you watch that AFC least battle last night? That was 3 hours you can't get back. And for those of you who like to wager on these things, not that any of us out there really do that, if you did, hopefully you capitalized on my steadfast advice to take the Jets, getting anywhere from between 11.5 to 13 points in some places. That game was destined to be a 3-hour lesson in futility. Now, two things come to mind while watching the pass dropping contest. First, for all the jokes laid at the feet of the Jets franchise, most of them warranted. The Jets defense is actually pretty good. Think about it. Geno Smith and company turned the ball over 4 times and still only lost by a field goal. And yeah, I know, they let Edelman catch a career-high 13 passes and PPR owners are tickled. But it was for 78 yards. NFL defenses will let you catch an unlimited number of 6-yard passes if they aren't inside the 6-yard line, and that's the best play you have in the playbook. The second thing I thought about is that there are thousands of amateur athletes across America playing football, and the collective group of receivers that those teams ran out there are the ones that beat out everyone else for NFL roster spots? If that's the case, we have another national crisis here, because we as a nation can't catch a football. If the goal of the sport was to let the ball hit you without catching it, these guys would be awesome. In traditional leagues, Bilal Powell led both rosters with a whopping 12 fantasy points. And Tom Brady has now put up just 30 fantasy points in his first 2 weeks, meaning that if you drafted him, no matter what the round, you have to be sick. Alright, so what are we watching for the rest of this weekend? Well, can David Wilson hold on to the ball? Can he hold on to it and run with it and make something happen? Has he figured out how to pass protect, or will the Giants have to take him off the field in passing downs? Because that's going to limit his touches. Wilson has the potential to be a fantasy stud, or a complete bust. And this is probably his last shot, so follow this issue closely. And in the same game, the Manning brothers are playing. Now, both completed 27 of 42 throws in week 1, with each tossing the pigskin for at least 450 yards. They combined for 11 TDs and 74 fantasy points. Will there be an aerial fantasy party at MetLife Stadium where you can just play a Manning and virtually any receiver on either roster and win your week? Maybe. How about Megatron? Will he get off the schneid after posting just 3 fantasy points in week 1? You would think so, but don't forget he missed most of the preseason and maybe he's just unhealthy. We're going to find out. It won't be easy. The Cardinals defense only allowed 10 fantasy points to the Rams wide receivers last week, so this will certainly be a test. And how about these guys? Cam Newton, Maurice Jones-Drew, Trent Richardson, Marshawn Lynch. Can they validate their draft day status? Those 4 projected fantasy stars combined for just 28 total fantasy points in week 1, making an entire summer's worth of planning on who to take a colossal waste of time. Today's question comes from @SemiPro, who writes, with St. Louis traveling to Atlanta, do I think that Steven Jackson will have a big day against his former team? Well, look, the Falcons' passing game is far superior to their running game. The running game has to do as much, if not more, with the play of the offensive line than the running back. So I'm not expecting Jackson to put up 25 fantasy points or anything like that, just because he's facing some old teammates or a familiar uniform. The game isn't even in St. Louis. He posted, I think, 11 fantasy points last week. Can he add a touchdown to that or something? Sure. But I'm not going to move him up the ladder just because he's playing the Rams. Alright, here's what I know. If you can somehow pretend you didn't see last night's game between the Jets and the Pats, this is now a passing league with the rules of the game changed to make the passing game more successful. And with the weather still mild around the country and 3 games in dome stadiums this weekend, the ball is going to be flying around stadiums throughout the country this weekend, and for the second week in a row, I expect that major breakout games are going to come from quarterbacks, wide receivers, and tight ends, and not the running backs. If you have a question you want answered here on the show, shoot me an email or hit me up with a tweet. I only answer 1 a day here, but if I don't get to it, I'll tweet you back with my best advice. And be sure to tune in to the Roto Experts Fantasy Football News Notes and Analysis segment every weekday. I'll be here to keep you current and ahead of the competition, and on weekends, come back for This Week in Fantasy Football, where I team up with my sidekick, the King, Scott Engel, covering the week that was, the week that will be, answering your viewer questions. For Roto Experts, I'm Mike Cardano. Enjoy your week 2, everyone.